All right, everybody, welcome to the Baboony Tim Show. Today we have a very special guest star, Andy, which is my older brother, and that's why he has the older monkey face.
Hello.
Hello,
Apparently, I'm
everyone.
also sleepy, which I am.
Sleepy and happy.
Sleepy and content.
So this
The
video is
epitome of
going
just,
to be about just conversation between me and my brother, talking about redemption, talking about the past, talking about the future. I don't know. So wherever this conversation goes.
yeah. Um, I remember redemption being brought into our church by a guy named Marcus McDaniel, who is our youth pastor. He's still a big part of our current lives, but he brought in redemption and taught us, and it was like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
This is coming from a family who didn't really get to play a lot of different kind of trading card games. Like we saw Pokemon cards and
Hmm.
Yu-Gi-Oh cards, didn't really know what those were. Didn't know what Magic was until high school.
Hmm.
But he brought us Redemption, and we were hooked right away. It was right around the G and H starter period, and I think we were obsessed. And we also didn't have anything to spend our money on because our parents were kind of controlling with what we could spend our money on. So I just remember a ton of money going to this game,
This
and
was one of the things that we could spend money on, huh?
yes, it was an outlet, and we were able. We didn't really have access to many tournaments though. There was another play group in
Arcadia, right?
Arcadia, yeah, Arcadia, Thousand Oaks or something like,
That was
probably
like
Arcadia.
3.5 hours at least away.
It was a drive certainly, but it was always fun on the drive, getting to spend more time with Marcus and
Oh
also
yeah.
talk about redemption. Those tournaments seemed pretty small. They were probably about 20, 25 people. Would you say, Tim?
Yeah. Maybe even smaller.
Yeah. And then we had our local play group tournaments, which were like 8 people, if
Right.
that.
Just like people from our church and stuff.
And three of those being you, me, and our other brother Joe,
Yeah.
and Marcus being four. And yeah, so it was not very big, but we loved the game a lot at the time. We g- we got our starters, and then we right when we joined in, Priest came out,
Right.
and that was kind of the next power level of redemption
I remember
at the
looking at these
time
curse
with our
cards and I'm
character.
just like, what is happening? Like Unknown Nation was such like a cool card to me back then.
Oh yeah, that was the auto include for all of my decks.
Hmm.
I remember specifically loving that, and the new brigades of teal and orange coming out at that time. Tim really loved teal and orange as
Yeah.
pretty much his main decks.
Yeah. Just I put all the cards in the same deck. All of my teal cards, all my orange cards. I even was like so love redemption so much I would bring my redemption cards to school. And nobody else played redemption, but I had one friend who played Yu-Gi-Oh! And we sat down and he tried to play a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I was playing my redemption cards. It was funny.
Yeah, I've done that before with Magic and Redemption facing off. The Magic had such stronger characters, but they had mana costs, whereas Redemption you could just put anything down that you wanted.
Yeah. A
My
memory.
highlight.
I'll
Go
go for
ahead.
you. Go for it.
I was just gonna say my highlight of that time was going to nationals, and the only year it was ever in California, and it was super
Right.
exciting. We were really involved in the forums, and so I have a vivid memory of seeing Gabe walking down. I'd never seen him before, but everyone knew who he was, and everyone's like, "Yeah, Gabe." I'm pretty sure I bombed out of that tournament. I don't think I actually had a very good time, but
Right.
I have fond memories now of going to Spaghetti Factory the night before and play testing the night
Mm,
before because we spent the night at a church and just play tested.
yeah, I remember
Uh,
that.
I I don't like to play meta decks. We were also very out of the meta being in Southern California, away from the East Coast and everybody's
Hmm.
tournaments there. So I was playing a Kings of Judah deck with the Gates of Jerusalem promo at the
The
time,
OG one.
the OG one. It performed pretty well in Southern California. It bombed out at nationals.
Mhm.
I think there were games where I didn't even get a soul.
Oh dang.
Um,
Just got
the game
wrecked.
was just, yeah. I don't remember doing any other events than Type 1 2 player, but which is too bad. I hope we did other games.
Yeah. I don't very remember a lot from that tournament except just a couple of matches and Authority of Christ getting played and destroying everything. And I wasn't the
Oh
one
yeah.
playing it, so
Oh, and then Split Altar was the promo that year, and it was like the worst Nationals promo we've
What?
ever seen.
That was good. That one was kind of
The
good.
one that just shuffled artifacts into the
Yeah,
deck,
that was kind of
and
meta
it
back
was.
then.
I guess I don't remember it. I
Ye-
thought we tried to make it cool, and then we're like, well, other people got these other cool promos from going to nationals, and we got split altar. That was kind of what I remember.
I think the thing I remember the most was getting so excited about Thesaurus X Paradius, the new set with the foil cards. It's like, can I open a
Oh
Mayhem
yeah.
or Grapes of Wrath? Just getting their hands on the new cards that day was so exciting.
Now that you say that, I do think I remember doing a booster with
Yeah,
Tex P, which is the abbreviation for that set,
XP.
and that was super exciting. Um,
Yeah.
we played through Disciples, and then for various reasons, the play groups in California broke down. I moved to college.
Yep.
Um, I did teach friends at college how to play, and then we play multiplayer redemption games only. So it wasn't two-player redemption games. So I have like these 50 card, 56 card decks, and everyone that I taught how to play the game would get super obsessed with all the cards, and they couldn't cut anything. So they'd have like 100, 150 card decks with no repeats of cards. It was just they
Oh
just
wow.
loved all the cards too much. And so I would bomb out of those games because I would run out of gas, whereas the other three players had these huge decks.
Right. Because you were
For,
playing the optimized 57 card deck and they were playing the 150 card deck.
yeah, and if they could just block me out enough times, I was just done. But everyone I taught at the time had a lot of fun. But I'm ultimately a board gamer, and we moved on to
Hmm.
a lot of board games. I mean, I'm really well relative because, as I said, I'm not in the meta, so
Yeah.
I like to make decks that not everybody else is running,
Yeah.
and not even counter decks to meta decks. Just make my own thing, which doesn't work in a trading any kind of trading card game typically.
Hmm. Hmm. I wanted to put a part of something in the video, the memory that we would go around and raid all the Christian bookstores. Can we talk about that? And then
Oh
maybe I
yeah.
can like insert
Oh
that back
yes.
into like a reminiscing part of the video.
Sure.
So one of my favorite,
Something. Go ahead.
so let me pause you for a second because one of my favorite memories that now that you're talking about this is that we would, whenever we were on vacation, we would go and travel to all the Christian bookstores along our route. And we'd go inside and find all the women's packs that hadn't been sold. And we'd raid those because we knew they contained falling aways.
Yeah, that was always super fun. It was always a road trip, and it'd be multi-day road trip, but we'd beg our parents to stop at the Christian bookstores, and we'd know that this was the untapped area because we knew that there were no redemption players, at least online and on Cactus Game Design forums
Yeah.
in these areas. So we go and we buy all the women's packs, and they were always usually super underpriced because no one was buying them in these
Like, yeah,
bookstores.
discount bin women's packs, dude. That was the day.
And we always felt really proud of buying those and selling these.
Because it felt like we found something special that nobody else found. I love those memories.
Yes, that's a really fun memory.
And what
Oh,
was your username back then on the forums? What did you go by back then?
Kip Henderson, and I had Hezekiah's signet ring. Him and I did a draft when Play came out. Maybe
Clay
we
Brigade?
did a two person draft. Yeah, I think Clay was the new brigade. I'm not. It was like the church persecuted church.
Persecuted
I think
Church.
is when we next played, but it was just him and I. I bought or he bought a box of that, and we just did a draft. And I remember being so overwhelmed because there were so many. And I think we must have done the Fall of Man at the same time. I think that's what we did.
Yeah.
I just remember feeling so overwhelmed by the deck building choices because back in the day, dual brigade colors were relatively rare, and then we were
Hmm.
opening these packs, and all of a sudden they're multi brigade, and they could also be an evil card and
Yeah.
an artifact, and just
Yeah. And
it
don't
seemed
even,
so insane.
we didn't even open up the Legacy of Christ cards that were dual sided. That would, I think, would have even just made it even
Oh
worse.
yeah. Yeah, they weren't even dual sided at that point, but it was still so overwhelming, and I was just so disappointed. Um,
Right.
because it seemed so it was we'd been out of the meta too long, and so it wasn't a gradual change; it was
It
a
was like
sudden
a,
change.
yeah, like a waterfall of just information. I don't think we were ready for it. And it kind of both left,
Um,
it left a bad taste in both of our mouths about redemption.
yeah, I think that was 2018 or 2019 or something like that.
Yeah, both of us, I feel like, were like, okay, we don't feel like redemption's heading in a good direction. And we just went and did our own things. Like for me, that was Magic. And for you, that was your board games.
Yeah. Since then, we moved up to Washington State, and the Redemption finally made a Discord, which makes it easier to get on, and especially when you're already part of other groups. I'm not a part of a lot of groups, and I don't like to post on Discords or
You're a
anything. But
lurker.
yes,
Yeah.
but I saw this talk about roots, and I thought that sounded really exciting. I could never bring myself to spend my allowance money because my wife and I give me and her different allowances. So spend my allowance money on redemption cards because who would play with me? Now I live in Western Washington.
Right.
It seemed like there was no one nearby. I'm just barely getting people in my church to learn how to play board games. So to get them into a thing they actually have to pay for
Hmm.
would be another thing. But I thought Roots was interesting, and sure enough, the fundraiser went through pretty well, and then there were there was going to be packs with Roots cards. I said, well, you know what, this might be fun to do a trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
Um, Tim decided he was coming up from California to Washington for Christmas, and my other brother Joey, our other brother Joey, lives here too, and I thought it'd be fun to do like a four-player booster draft with Marcus, the person who originally introduced us to Redemption. So I got the new set of Israel's Rebellion, a box of Israel's
Hmm.
Rebellion and the Roots cards. And then I've always liked Old Testament as opposed to New Testament when it comes to redemption cards. So I got it is the Lineage of Christ set and got a box of that too. And so we did over Christmas, this last just 2023 Christmas, we did a booster draft of Roots and Israel's Rebellion, and that was really enjoyable and
Yeah.
fun. Um, it was much more easier coming to those cards from the old
Especially
cards.
the roots stuff. Like that was just felt like we are cracking priest packs again.
Yeah, and so we were, yeah, exactly. And we were like, Tim and I had started getting into it before the booster draft, going through all because I had all the cards that Joey, and I had gotten. And so we were going through the old decks and starting to play again a little bit, combining it with the new cards that we got him from that last draft that Tim and I had done.
And so yeah,
Yeah,
it
and
just
so
created this spark again, I guess.
yeah, I did come away from it still feeling discouraged after doing the Lineage of Christ draft. That one we
Yep.
just did a three-player draft, and
Oh
again it
boy.
went back to really hard deck
That
decisions
one was really
about
hard. Yeah, I was like, what am I supposed to do with all these meek blue people? Like, what the
yeah,
heck?
like Meek was a whole new concept that was kind of not really in Roots and Israel's Rebellion. Um, the cards, I mean, they probably meshed well, but we weren't getting good decks, drafting
Yeah,
decks.
the deck just felt
Uh,
super clunky.
and so I was pretty discouraged after that. And then Tim dropped the news on me that all of our classic cards were now not in the rotation anymore.
Yep.
And so I look at this huge box of cards from our childhood, and it's like, wow, well, what do I do with these cards now? I don't
Right.
know.
They're full
Um,
of the best cards from the redemption sets like 10 years ago, but now you can't even use them if you want to go to a tournament unless it's like one of the classic ones.
right. And it's like, well, now it's like a good paperweight. Not even a good paperweight because it's too big. Um, and so I was pretty discouraged. And then Tim decides that he wants to try to go to nationals this year, and so I'm trying to talk him out of it because I don't feel like the game's very good anymore. But um, uh, Tim has turned that around because he's made this cool redemption channel, and it's one benefit of living on the West Coast with because at 8 a.m. that's a great time for me to watch his new video
You
every
have
day.
an idea about a battle box. Tell me more about that idea. What did you mean when you were telling me about that idea?
Well, redemption battle boxes would kind of uh, make more historical fights, I suppose, more biblical uh, relevance in terms of existing in the same time period. So, for example, you could have like David and his mighty men versus the giants and the other lands surrounding Israel at the time. So the decks would be all based. There'd be one person who'd have just heroes in their deck, and it would be David and his mighty men, and the other player would have the giants, and so their giants would attack with like taunt abilities
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
do different things, and the game wouldn't really be about rescuing lost souls. It'd be more about um, some other sort of objective.
Right. It's like some alternative way to play the game, but maybe more immersive and more themed, perhaps is a good way to say it.
Yeah, and maybe some of the cards would only be limited to that format,
Right.
but other of the cards it could be played in the normal format.
They're like very
And it could bring
scenario specific cards, but that could
right.
really lead. It's almost like a mini board game.
Yeah, yeah. There's actually an LCG card game called Lord of the Rings card game that would kind of be similar, except the people would be it'd be two-player or even more players, depending on the scenario. For example, there's another one I was thinking of where it could be like Nehemiah holding and building
Hmm.
Jerusalem
Hmm.
against the people surrounding it. And so you could have like three different gaps in the wall that have to be filled with defenders because
Hmm.
if the invaders attack one portion of the wall, you can't just rush people over right away. So
Right.
you could have the defenders be like two or three players or something like that,
Right.
and one person be the enemies in the land. And it could be a good way to introduce new redemption concepts to newer players, like
Hmm.
taunt, if taunt would be a good one to
Hmm.
introduce there. And
I could imagine
I
bounce being useful. Bounce him to defend the other part of the wall.
yeah, and then also have the reserve, quote unquote. So like you can hold your heroes in reserve and deploy them to where they need to go, something like that. Like pull from reserve.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Because you and I were talking, and we were feeling like the best gameplay Redemption has to offer is when the offenses and the defenses align thematically. For example, I was playing a Genesis Patriarch deck, and then my opponent had a Genesis Egyptian defense. And it was just funny that the cards are like begging for grain and then famine.
Yes, yeah, it was very biblical and in terms of the back and forth. And it kind of sets more in the time period, giving some more
Hmm.
Bible knowledge. I've learned a lot of Bible knowledge from Redemption.
Yeah,
Um,
tell me
I've
more about that.
impressed I've impressed people in my college classes. We're in an Old Testament like basic survey class, and the person's like, okay, who can tell me all the professor's like, okay, who can tell me all the judges? And he looks around, not expecting anyone to answer. And I had been playing a judges deck somewhat recently,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was just like, oh yeah, Ehud. And then because some of the cards talked more about their ability, I mean, like what they did in real life, I was able to kind of give some more background to some of the judges at least.
Right. Like that was a big thing for me too. Just learning about all these different warriors in my Red Warrior deck. I feel like I could have won any Bible Jeopardy there was about Red Warriors.
Yeah, and then I thought I knew a lot about Redemption, and then I came back to Redemption, and I'm like, oh, there's even more characters.
Right. Because now they
And
traced out the whole lineage of Christ to characters. So people who only got one line in the Bible now have a whole entire redemption card built around him.
right, and a whole entire Redemption theme as well.
Yeah. So eventually, maybe one day we'll be able to recite the whole lineage of Christ just based upon these Bible cards.
Yeah. Um, I think the biggest change in Redemption for me has been the Son of God not being able to be played on your own lost souls. That really has changed the game around a lot for me because it used to be about preventing your opponent from getting souls through this whole other strategy, like
Mhm.
burying,
Mhm.
falling away, the double lost soul, letting your opponent rescue half of the double lost soul, and then burying it, so
Yeah.
wasting a rescue attempt.
Burial used to be really good.
Yeah, and also Burial Shroud, completely preventing your opponent from attacking for 2 turns, and you as well. A lot of and trying to make that Soul Drought the Lost Soul Shuffler, but
Yeah,
really having the Son of God target your other Lost Souls, and now it's more of an offensive weapon because it takes
right,
out those valuable Lost Souls because the
right.
abilities are so strong now. I think that's changed Redemption for me.
I remember sites used to be like a thing. You put your lost souls in sites, and then whatever lost soul you can't put in a site, you just son of God, and they're just kind of locked out of the game.
Can you still put Lost Souls in sights? It seems
Oh
like some
yeah,
of the cards.
but all the sites today are like multicolored, so it's just like great.
Yeah.
And the sites that are monocolored aren't even like good. It's there's so much just random site access just running around that I don't think site lock is a viable strategy anymore.
What do you think the biggest change in Redemption for you since coming back has been?
I think Gospel of Christ, like the whole set, that's the biggest change of Redemption. Like it took Redemption from, let's say Redemption is at a 10 and it pushed it to like level 50. And I think you could just build a deck full of Gospel of Christ cards and bring it to a tournament and still do well. Like the set is incredibly fun, don't get me wrong, but it's incredibly pushed. And I think that's the biggest thing that's changed. So like for me, learning those cards, learning how they play, learning the different types of offenses you can run, different types of defenses, that for me has felt like the biggest change in Redemption for me since coming back.
Makes sense.
So we were talking, and what's one of the biggest things that you're glad that has changed about Redemption?
Um, at first, when we came into Redemption, we were getting priest packs, and it was all new cards, all new everything. And then we started getting Faith of Our Fathers tins, and you got some old booster packs in there, but that made for fun drafting
Yeah, yeah.
situations. And then this Rock of Ages came out, and it's the same situation, and
Like, oh,
I
we
think I
still
still like
have
that.
old packs
I,
in
s-
here. Cool,
I
I
still
guess.
have the old tens. I use them to keep decks in. They don't really work anymore because the reserve, they're not big enough with sleeved cards and decks.
Yeah, those Rock of
Uh,
Ages tins are so cool.
but then we got Tex P, and the foil was really cool, but then there were a bunch of old cards
Hmm.
in it,
Hmm.
and that was coming from having only opened new cards or old cards in a booster draft situation.
Right.
And I already had all these old cards in multiples and multiples.
Yeah. So
So I
it's
was
just
not
kind of like useless draft chaff.
yeah. And then when Tim and I did the draft somewhat more recently in 2019 or whenever, it was kind of the same thing. And we were disappointed to see that the Tech
Like
Speed
we
Disciples
bought
had.
new cards. Like why are they all these old cards in these packs? What is up with that?
However, that's what was super exciting about opening Israel's Rebellion with the Roots cards,
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
because they were all new cards.
Yeah.
And also some of the new cards were some of the old cards. So that was a really, really attractive option coming back into Redemption, because it's like, okay, here's some cards I basically recognize for the most part, as well as some new cards that aren't too complicated,
Yeah.
have a clear theme, and I could make an easy deck out of those cards that
Yeah.
I was getting.
So whoever decided to stop putting the old cards in the new packs, thank you. We are eternally grateful for that decision.
Yes, I'm not sure if I would have come back to Redemption if if they were just old cards, because we did the draft with the Lineage of Christ, and we were just getting starter pack cards as
Mhm.
the duplicates. I mean, as the
Yeah.
back cards,
Yeah.
and so it was really weird drafting with like, okay, there's several Son of Gods floating around and Angel of Lords and stuff,
Yeah.
and
That
it's like,
was
okay,
definitely
well,
interesting.
I have already. It's just like I already have a ton of these cards. I'm not sure why I need more Angel of Lords and Son of Gods. But at that time, I didn't know that all the classic cards were out of rotations. So it was somewhat helpful to build up some basic decks. But for people who own a lot of Redemption, I think wasn't as good.
What deck are you hoping to bring to regionals? I know we've been theory crafting, but we haven't got a lot of practice in. But what deck is, or what decks are on your mind right now for that?
Yeah, I have zero playing experience since December, and I just watch you, and so live through your playthroughs. I hope to. You did a video on the soul hiding strategy. I hope to bring some sort of variation on that. Tim and I will have a week long boot camp
Yeah.
before the tournament to just
Yeah.
play. So I'll be in a really small meta, and I have ideas to kind of counter nativity decks, but that's because that's all I see Tim play. So
Yeah.
I don't know how well it'll actually do.
Hey, yeah.
Um, but I want to bring some sort of soul hiding variation, and then you'll have to see what Tim and I come up with for teams, because that'll be
Right.
part of
Like, I don't
the
even
boot
know how
camp.
to build a team stick. Let's be honest right now.
I remember when teams first came out, it was actually a really exciting thing because no one knew what they were doing,
Yeah, it's
and
the
it was
Wild
just fun to
West.
just bring two decks together and just play. And those were some of my more fun memories of previous redemption tournaments. So I'm
We
excited
can,
to see what it has turned out to be.
yeah, hopefully we can recreate that little magic, the simplicity of just jamming two decks together. Maybe it'll be more
It,
nuanced now.
yes, it helps that Tim has a copy of the new cards, because otherwise
Yeah.
we'd be really limited
Yeah, that
on
is
what we could
true.
do. But as it is, I'm gonna have to basically use all his cards to create my deck for regionals. So I'm just crafting. I don't have Lackey downloaded. I don't have the time in my life at this point to
Yeah.
be able to do a bunch of that stuff, play online,
That's
and
okay.
more of the stage in life.
Or
Yeah.
different seasons of life. I'm at the lots of time on my hands stage of life, and you're at the lots of responsibility on your hands.
Yeah. Now and so, for example, tomorrow night I have men's game night at church that I run.
Hmm.
So twice a month I do men's board game nights. Someday I might sneak redemption in there. Um,
Yeah.
but we'll see. It's turning out to be a ministry because non-Christians come to it, and it's
Hmm.
also a time for fellowship for guys in our church because there's not really another place opportunity for that in our church right now.
Yeah,
So
sounds
it's been
really
good.
sweet. Yeah. As far as what I'm thinking about for regionals, like if I had to go to regionals tomorrow, it'd probably be some sort of Herod deck with something else. Because
I'm sure.
and you know me and the Herods, but I don't know. Is that just too cliche? Like, should I try to do something else?
Why mix up what's been working?
I think for me as a person, as a player, I need to get a certain amount of reps in and to feel confident and assertive with my deck. I just don't think I could pick up a deck that I'm blind to and just go into a tournament and expect to do well.
Yeah, I think this will be great experience for you, actual in-person tournament as
Yeah.
opposed to Wacky and Zoom.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a whole different feel, and I'm excited to see how you do. I fully expect to bomb out and see you in the top placements. So
LOL.
we'll see. We'll see if those expectations become true
Yeah.
or what.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, we will see. Well, as we're wrapping up here, just wanted to give an open mic. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about or it's been on your mind or
I think it's really cool for the redemption community to have a resource like Tim, who has put out a video every day since he's started. That seems like an insane amount of content. I hope people out there appreciate all the work he puts in to this kind of stuff. And I hope it'll help future and current generations of redemption players as they continue on to redemption.
oh, that's really sweet. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
All right, so this is Tim and his baboony brother Andy signing off. We'll see you guys at regionals, I guess.
Or you might see another interview. We'll see.
I guess another interview, maybe like the week of going into the
Yeah.
tournament, before and after.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, we'll
the
do maybe a before and after experiences because
Mhm.
Tim will be with me afterwards as well. So
Yeah, we could do the battle report or something. I don't know.
that
Right.
might be too crazy, too much for me to follow.
Bye.
Bye bye.